Greetings, all you Jackson Jennets, and welcome to your daily dose of donkey with Ginger. It's your boy, the Viking Donkey. I'm coming to you by myself because, unfortunately, this weekend when I was trying to get things to work, my Twitch app was having problems over here on the Xbox, so I couldn't do little special things I had planned, but I'll do my best to bring you the offseason news that happened this week for the Steelers and break down the quarterback trades that I put out there. And we're going to go ahead and not do a breakdown of position group this week. I don't know why I'm having a hard time speaking here. Instead, we're going to start the defense next week. So first off, Steeler news. Steelers bring back Carl Joseph, safety, former first-round pick from West Virginia. Really a non-move for me because he's a downhill box safety that can't cover in a time in the NFL where you cannot be that type of player. It's why he hasn't found success anywhere, and why he signed for veteran minimum and last year spent time on the Steelers practice squad, because players like that just aren't there. But you never know. Maybe he takes a huge step in development and something happens. But that's a non-move for me. Taco Charlton leaves to go to New Orleans, but before that happened, the Steelers signed the guy who you have to assume will be the replacement for Charlton, last edge rusher depth guy, and that's Jannard Avery, former Brown, former Eagle, I believe is where he played last year. Had 4.5 sacks his rookie year, which was 2-3 years ago. Type of guy who can fill in at outside linebacker, the type of guy you want as a bottom of the depth chart guy. But the bigger problem is there's still a need for that immediate backup behind Highsmith and Watt. And the Steelers haven't quite filled that yet. Maybe they'll do it in the draft. But this is the type of guy who you want to see on the bottom of the roster. He's a guy who's gone out there, has shown production in the past, has had a little bit of production, has had starts at both of his stops in Cleveland and Philly. I think Jannard Avery is a good signing, the type of guy you want to be as the bottom of the roster type of guy. And at this stage of free agency, that's what you're going to see a lot more signings happen. Or those bottom of the roster type of guys, the guys who are just kind of fillers. And looking at his potential and his play in the past, he seems to be a good bottom of the roster type of guy. Now let's get into quarterback trades, because holy moly, this offseason, the quarterback carousel was a fun one. We'll get into it. We'll rank my trades, and we'll see how terrible they were when I'm all said and done with it. Let's start in no particular order here. It's just a list I'm following. Let's start with the Broncos trading for Russell Wilson. This was the Broncos acquiring Russell Wilson, 4th round this year, and the Seahawks in exchange get a first rounder this year, a first rounder next year, a second rounder this year and next year, a 5th rounder this year. They get Drew Lock, former second round pick, Noah Fant, a good tight end there, and defensive tackle Shelby Harris. I think the Broncos gave up too much for Russ, because their offensive line is not going to be good enough, I don't think, where Russ is going to make a huge difference. But I get it. They needed a quarterback. If you looked at Lock play last year, it's terrible. I feel like they gave up just a little too much. But getting a guy who could put you over the top is huge. The bigger scare for me, though, is I'm not sure, where does Russell Wilson fit in the AFC West? Is he the second best quarterback? Because he's definitely not better than Patrick Mahomes. Is he second best? Or does that go to either Justin Herbert and or the people who love Derek Carr because of all his fancy stats? Does that go to Derek Carr? So you're talking he could fit in, depending on your view of things, either, let's hope we see that next year, Devin Bush pick 6 of Lamar Jackson. But is he the second best quarterback or the worst quarterback in that division? That's what I mean. Where does he actually fit? There's arguments to be made all the ways around it. I'm not going to say anything about it. What I'm going to say is I think they overpaid a little bit. I think this is a B- trade for Denver, and that's purely because Russell Wilson is definitely an upgrade for them, so that should make that team better, but does it make it better than the other teams in the division that are also getting better? So I give them a B-, because going out and getting Russell Wilson is huge. And as for Seattle, they're going full bore rebuild, getting 2 seconds, 2 first, a tight end, and Noah Fant, who definitely has skill. They seem to think something in Drew Lock. I don't think so. And Shelby Harris is a good player. So for the Seahawks, I have to give them a B+, because I think you maximize the value, especially with Russell Wilson being a guy who clearly it seems wanted out of there. So I definitely think, to me, the short-term winner of the trade has to be Denver, because they get the best player in the trade. The long-term winner to me, Seattle, because I think the value they got there was really good. But we'll have to see what they do with those first-round picks. Then we can go to the most recent trade, which is the Colts trading for Matt Ryan. They get Matt Ryan in exchange for, I believe it's a third round pick this year. I think that's all that was exchanged. And to me, this trade's an F for the Falcons. They get a $40 million dead cap hit this year from Matt Ryan's contract. That's absolutely terrible. And only a third rounder to take that much money is just the amount of money you have to take. I think you have to get at least two picks, and one should be sometime in the second round. For the Colts, it has to be a B+. Matt Ryan, to me, is going to be a big upgrade over how Carson Wentz struggled. And last year, if you watched it, they make the playoffs if it isn't for Carson Wentz being Carson Wentz. And we'll get to him later in this. So I have to say Falcons absolutely fail F. Colts get a B+, because I think Matt Ryan, while he's not an over-the-top quarterback anymore, he's not the MVP he used to be, still a quarterback that can get the job done. And at 37, I would take him over Carson Wentz. And only giving up a third rounder for that, huge. And when you consider they don't have to pay that much money because, well, it is what it is. All that dead money went to Atlanta. Third up, we got the Browns trading for Deshaun Watson. I don't know what to say about this. The Browns get Watson in a 6th-round pick in 2024. The Texans get a 1st-rounder this year, next year in 2024, a 3rd-rounder next year, a 4th-rounder this year, and a 4th-rounder in 2024. The trade itself is about what Houston wanted for Watson. I think 3 first-rounders for a quarterback is a little absurd, especially one with all this civil cases against him that could be suspended for a full year. And then what kills me is for this trade to happen, the Browns had to essentially guarantee Watson all this money that is $50 million a year over 5 years is what it breaks down to. And not much is guaranteed this year. So those hits are going to be bigger year 2 through 4, where they think if he gets suspended this year, then they're not overpaying. But the thing is, he hasn't played in a year. Remember, last time he played, his team was 4-12. So he's not a dude who's going to single-handedly carry a franchise. He's proven that because when Houston tried to have him do that, he went 4-12. I give the Browns a C- for this. The only reason I say that is Deshaun Watson definitely has the potential to be an absolute game changer, and getting those quarterbacks are huge. I think 3 first-rounders is way too much, especially for a guy who has a chance to be suspended for a full year. And then the only reason you got him is you were willing to guarantee him $50 million a year, meaning he gets hurt, something like that happens, you have no way out, you owe him all of this money. And I'm going to put this out for Gingy, and he's going to talk about it probably when he gets back. But Gingy also said, isn't it just like the Browns to have a quarterback who finally gets them to the playoffs, beats the Steelers in the playoffs, and then the Browns give up on that quarterback? Valid points he was making there. And right now, actually, they haven't given up on him. I guess technically he's still on the roster, but everyone knows that they went out. Now, the other half of that trade, Houston, I think this is a huge win. To be able to get what you were trying to get for him before all the civil stuff came out, you're still able to get that. Huge win for Houston. I give them an A in this case because that's what they were trying to get before Watson came with a big taboo. And then Watson got a big taboo, and they still got it for him. You have to give an A on that. That's great job finding a desperate team. Next up for trades, we have the Washington Commanders now. Worst name ever. Like, who decided that was a good thing? They should have just stayed the Washington football team with that name. They trade for Carson Wentz. Why are you trading for a guy you know Indianapolis wants to cut? I mean, seriously? And this is what it is. It's an exchange of 2nd-round picks between Washington and Indianapolis. Washington gets the Colts. Indianapolis, though, also gets a 3rd-rounder this year, a 7th-round. Oh, wait, no. They get a 3rd-rounder this year. Washington gets a 7th-rounder this year. But then a conditional 3rd-round pick also goes to Indy. Indy, this is an A+. A guy you were going to cut, you're able to trade him for draft capital where you get an earlier pick in the 2nd round now. You add a 3rd-rounder this year. You lose a 7th-rounder next year to essentially get a 3rd-rounder, or you use a 7th-rounder this year to get essentially a 3rd-rounder next year, which I think goes to a 4th-rounder if he doesn't play enough. But they don't have to take on a huge amount of dead money. I mean, they still take on the dead money, but they don't have to worry about any other cuts to Carson Wentz. They managed to actually get something out of Carson Wentz, a quarterback they wanted to get to. You have to give them an A+, and then you have to give the Commanders an F. How do you trade for a quarterback you could have signed off the scrap heap? I mean, that's beyond crazy to me that happens. All right, next we have the Bills trading for a backup quarterback in Case Keenum. I believe the Browns got a 7th-round pick here, which good job turning a guy you didn't want anymore into a pick. We'll give the Browns a B, because we'll say a B minus. A B minus because it doesn't move the needle, but you got something for Keenum, and this is after they had traded or signed Jacoby Brissett. So the Browns get some. We'll give them B minus on this one. And the Bills getting Case Keenum to be the new backup. He's a good backup quarterback. He's solid. Really, a 7th-rounder isn't anything. We'll give them a B minus too. I don't think anyone won this trade. I think it's one of the few trades that happened that was an even kill trade. I guess technically we already talked about the Seahawks trading for Drew Lock. We already rated that one earlier, but I didn't talk about Drew Lock in the trade. So I'll specifically talk the Drew Lock part of the Russell Wilson trade. Seattle sees him as a short-term fix, and if they saw a little something in him, a lot of people, he has a big arm strength in there. This is what it is with Drew Lock. If he figures it out for Seattle, they can have a decent year. And they look smart for the trade. If he doesn't figure it out, they're terrible, and they're in better position to draft a quarterback next year when the class is supposed to be better. So we talked about the Drew Lock part now, so hooray for us. What else did we have? We had some fun signings out there. Maybe some that I want to highlight is Marcus Mariota going to Atlanta right after they traded Matt Ryan. I like Mariota in the new NFL. A cheap deal, very similar. I think it's 2 years, $18 million. Very similar to what Trubisky signed here in Pittsburgh. Similar type of quarterback. Maybe sitting on the bench for a little bit helped him out a lot. And we'll see what happens down there. But I liked that signing. Teddy Bridgewater to the Dolphins. It is what it is. Bridgewater is your typical fill gap quarterback who seems to be available every year right now. He's filling the role that Jeff Garcia seemed to do at the end of his career back in the early 2000s. Jameis Winston's back to the Saints. No big surprise there. They liked what they saw in him last year, and if he stays healthy, they probably make the playoffs. We already talked Trubisky staying in the Steelers. I'm not really going to rank them, just give some news. The one I think is a sneaky one is, everyone's talking how Danny Dimes is super safe in New York, yet New York signs the prototypical backup guy who just seems to always find his way into starting, and that is, of course, Tyrod Taylor. Was starting over Justin Herbert till he got hurt. Very locker room loved guy. Who knows what goes up there, but if New York wants to win, I wouldn't be surprised if you see Tyrod Taylor starting for the Giants next year. So that covers the fun quarterback carousel so far that we've seen. I also have to give a big shout out to two teams for being super losers right now as it stands, unless they can change it. But as of right now, they both get Fs. And that's the Cleveland Browns for having Baker Mayfield right now. Super disgruntled, not traded, and almost every team that seems to be looking for a quarterback has their vacancy filled. Do they end up having to cut him? Who knows? And then we have the same idea going on in San Francisco, as they couldn't move on from Jimmy Garoppolo, even though they made it known that they wanted to. But all these other teams fill gaps, quarterbacks being traded you don't expect, like Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson getting the deal done, and then all of a sudden, San Francisco's left there holding Jimmy Garoppolo. So I got to give big Fs on those two teams for the non-moves they made so far. Subject to change. If a move does happen, I will put it in and I'll grade it out. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of the grades I gave out, how you would grade these trades, what trade you think was the best. Personally, to me, in terms of acquiring the quarterback and what you had to give up, the best to me was the Colts getting Matt Ryan, because I believe at value he was the only one where it didn't seem like there was a lot going back the other way. So I got to give the Colts the best value in terms of trades for me. Next week, hopefully, I'll actually get Twitch to work at the time I want so I can put on my special guest. We'll see if that's going to happen. Otherwise, it's time for me to give a shout out. Oh boy. Hard day to do shout out stuff. But you know what I'm going to do? Because he just lost in the Final Four. Final game of his career. Mike Krzyzewski, got to give a shout out to the legendary Duke coach, hanging him up. what a career he's had. Really weird how it seems to end everywhere with losses to North Carolina. Just not what you'd want if you're a Duke fan, but what a great career for Coach K. And hey, you can't argue with the success that man's had on the world stage, on the college stage, has done so much for basketball. Sad to see him go, but happy to see him go because he deserves to enjoy some part of his retirement time that he has left. So, big shout out there to Coach K. Okay, so I guess it's time I should tell you I am Viking _ Donkey on Twitch and Twitter. Go ahead and reach me on your Daily Dose of Donkey with Ginger, the YouTube channel. Leave a like, leave a comment, tell us what we're doing, tell us what you'd like to see. Give me your grades out here. I'd love to see what you all seen about the offseason, some grades you've seen, some things you want to talk about, some moves you think are under the radar or being way overhyped. I'd love to hear it. Donk Nation, Steeler Nation, I love y'all. Wave them if you got them. Here we go.